But that's when I've grown the most as a financial planner is when I'm thrown into situations or things change really quickly and I have to navigate that. Especially when it comes to like imposter syndrome, you overcome that shit real quick when you're just forced to be in that spot. And I think that worked out for the better, like especially when I launched my own firm. I would have stayed in the procrastinating phase forever and ever if I hadn't been kind of like pushed out of the nest.
Hello, and welcome back to Season 4 of The Blueprint, an FPA NexGen podcast. Today, we're joined by Lillian Turner, the founder and financial life planner of Daring Greatly Wealth and the 2026 chair of the FPA NexGen Committee. She shares her journey from broker-dealer intern to firm founder, working through networking via Tinder, finding firm alignments and misalignments, intuitive entrepreneurship, and all of her goals and initiatives for 2026 with NexGen. Take it away, Mike.
All right, Lillian, let's start off with a fun question. So we know that you got married just a couple of months ago and you planned a lot of the wedding yourself. So walk us through some of the challenges and successes of planning a wedding.
Ooh, that's a good question, Mike. I will say planning a wedding, one of the most challenging things to financially prepare for, because you really don't know what it's going to be like until you're in it. And you almost have very little idea what you're going to spend until it's the very end. And especially as you get closer to that date, you will spend whatever you need to do to make that day perfect. Like I found myself getting more and more careless with our spending. But it's really challenging to financially prepare for. So shameless plug, I'm actually creating a course right now on how to plan, how to afford your dream wedding, because I've learned a lot of like financial hacks around it. But I will say it was the most expensive day of my life and also worth 100% of the dollars we spent on it just to have like a once in a lifetime opportunity to have all of your friends and family, everyone you love in one room celebrating you. Like, when is that ever going to occur in your life ever again? Like, it's such a special moment. And for me, it felt like such an aligned financial decision, but it is a big one. So make it, do your due diligence, a lot of communication with your partner, with your parents, before you decide to do the whole shebang. But it was really so remarkable and still recovering financially and mentally. But again, wouldn't change a thing.
Do you think being a planner and a CFP helped you with the process?
Yes, I was really big on curating the guest experience, which I do a lot in my own practice. I curate the perfect client experience. And so from the moment our guests walked into the Iron Gates, there was, a string quartet playing Hallelujah and cranberry champagne and cookies laid out. Like from the second you set in, the scene was set. And I like that too with my clients of just making sure they have a really warm, inviting, welcoming experience, especially when they first sit down with a financial planner. It can be really overwhelming and nerve-wracking. And so just making them feel really comfortable and loved and seen is so important to me. But definitely I'm a planner by nature. I will say a challenge and an opportunity and a pro was that my husband is also a CFP. So we're both planners. And I never expected my partner to be really involved in the planning. Just, you grow up and you watch the movies and it's like all about the girl and her vision for the day. My fiance wanted to be really involved. And so we bashed heads a little bit on both being such planners. So I could see it being a benefit if one of you is a planner and one of you isn't. But it worked out really well too.
Well, we're definitely going to get to the dual CFP household. I think that's a
Yeah,
really interesting dichotomy as well.
unique.
For all the guy listeners, be present and be a part of the wedding planning. Do even if it's
Mhm.
not your thing, it goes a long way to just be interested and listen and give an opinion here and there. Uh, I know it goes a long
Yeah.
way.
And it's fun, right, Mike?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to your point, it's just a day that you're never going to forget. You're going to take those
Mhm.
memories to the grave with you. So if you put a lot of effort in up front, it's just going to pay dividends.
It's such a cool experience.
I think a lot of us know you, have heard your story, but we'll get a little deeper dive today. So you are the CEO and founder of Daring Greatly Wealth. You're also the chair of FPA NexGen, so a lot of good topics there. But to get us started, why don't you just walk us through your journey getting into the financial planning profession?
And I'll give you all the Cliff Notes version because it can be lengthy, but let me know afterwards if you want to hear more. So I grew up in a home with very little financial literacy. My parents never had a financial advisor. They did not know how to manage their money. They didn't teach my sister and I really anything about building wealth growing up. So the things I took with me from childhood were like just financial scarcity. I saw my parents work so, so hard, and yet there was never enough money at the end of the day to cover all of our needs and wants. And that was really hard for me as a kid. I remember being the only kid in eighth grade who couldn't afford to go on our Washington, D.C. field trip at the end of the year. So just a lot of financial scarcity, and money was a topic my parents would scream at each other about. And so I just grew up thinking like money is such a negative thing. There's a lot of emotions or anger that it kind of evokes, and just having a really bad relationship with money. But at the same time, kind of the psychology of money, the concept of money was always so fascinating to me. And so when I got into high school, I tried out all the business classes, marketing, personal finance, entrepreneurship, economics, accounting, and I loved it all. I loved like the entrepreneurial kind of mindset of being a business owner, and I loved my personal finance class so much. I took it twice in high school and then ended up in college, starting out as an accounting major, then switched to finance within the first semester or so. But back in 2015, when I started college, there was no like CFP board programs or financial planning programs at any of the universities in Wisconsin where I went to school. And so I felt still a little bit isolated. I was like the only female in my finance classes. Allie, I don't know if you felt this too at some point, but just very male dominated, very focused on like corporate finance and international relations and just things that weren't quite it for me. But still, I was like, there was something here. I felt called to do this type of work, but it wasn't quite where I wanted to be. I ended up doing this independent study, I think it was my junior year of college, on behavioral finance. And so I got to co-create like the syllabus and read a lot of books on behavioral economics and the psychology of money, a little bit of like the financial therapy stuff, and absolutely fell in love with that side of the industry. But I didn't know anyone who was doing this type of work. And there was no, I'm sure there was actually an FPA, a Financial Planning Association in Wisconsin, but we had no connection to them at the university I was in. I had no, thought to even like Google FPA because I just didn't know what it was. And so again, I felt very on my own trying to figure out how to get into this world of personal financial planning. And so there was a point in time, and you probably heard this in another podcast or another article that I've been in, but I used to go on Tinder to network. And I would change my age range from like 40 to 60-year-old men, and I'd swipe right on all of them that were financial advisors, and there was quite a few. And I would just try to get them to give me some advice or to just hear from them. And so that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about helping next gen planners today find their home in the industry, because it was really hard for me to break in without any connections. I call this like kind of a first gen wealth builder, but also a first gen financial planner. And so eventually I found a wealth management firm that was headquartered in Milwaukee where I was going to school. And I went online and I applied for every single internship opening they had, which is like 20 or 30 different positions. Like, it was like a huge firm. And the very first one to interview me was their anti-money laundering compliance division. And so this is around 2017, I think. I start working as a summer intern in the AML compliance division, and they have us, I kid you not, in a closet, all of us interns, no windows, crammed in with desks and monitors, scanning like new client inquiries, and we had like a governmental software that felt kind of like I was a spy, which you run new clients through to make sure they're not like drug dealers or, doing dirty things with their money. And I have plenty of stories there, but it was an enjoyable experience. I learned a lot, but definitely wasn't what I wanted to be doing. And so I started networking around within the firm that I was in. I joined we call them associate resource groups, ARGs. They're like different kind of clubs within the firm that you could join. I joined all of them, and I just networked with all of the financial advisors who were in those ARGs. And eventually, I found a female advisor who was a career changer herself. So she was pretty new in the industry, and she didn't have enough production or revenue for the firm to pay for a full kind of assistant or paraplanner for her. And so they let her pick an intern to bring in year round to work with. And she picked me. And so that was kind of how I first got started in the financial planning industry. I'll pause there in case you have questions, but I can keep going too.
It's amazing to me the resilience you had to keep on
Mhm.
searching within the field, because
Thank you.
to your point, whenever I joined, there was not very many personal financial planning programs within universities like there are now. And
Yeah.
you're in finance as your major, and it is very male dominated. Very, if you are successful, you're going investment banking, private
Mhm.
equity, you're not going financial planning. It's very
Right.
difficult to know it's even a route to take. So I applaud you, one, for finding a way to find a route and carving a route for yourself into the financial planning field.
Yeah.
What kept you motivated throughout each of those trials of figuring out,
Mm.
how do I get to where I want to be? Because you did not have a fun, clear path to success. There was
Mhm.
not a bunch of resources at your hands to tell you this is exactly how you get into a role like this. How did you find a way to keep on searching? And how did you know, I think I found what I'm looking for once you got to that point?
I've actually never been asked that before. But I want to say it was just this really like innate desire, innate calling to be in this field. I felt like I was meant to be here for a reason, but it was hard because I didn't see anyone I saw very few that looked like me, that were younger, that were women in the field. And that was just really the beginning of the journey. There have been so many other trials and tribulations over, the last 7, 8 years in the industry. So it's not like the hardships kind of stopped there. I would say they almost began there. I was so passionate about the work that we were doing, even though it was really investment focused at the time, and I knew like the investment specific stuff wasn't quite it for me. I think it was really the client relationships, the education piece. I never learned about financial literacy as a kid, and so being able to share that with other people and watching it absolutely transform their lives was so impactful for me. I have always loved since I was a high schooler, like dressing up in a suit and heels was so fun for me. In high school and college, you will never catch me in a suit anymore, but back then I felt like so powerful when I put on, those heels and a skirt and a blouse and a blazer. I just felt like the highest version of myself. So I think that was really fun. I'm sure I enjoyed like the financial side of it, even just being an intern. But I worked at, Target when I was 16 and made 825, and to make like $15 an hour as an intern, I was like, I have made it. So that's a great question. I think it was a combination of things, but really just this innate desire of like, this is what I'm meant to be doing. And I don't take that for granted because I see so many college kids who just have no idea what they want to do. And I've never had that problem, but I can empathize with how hard that must be too.
It's a bit difficult because I have people ask all the time, like, how do I know I'm even on the right path? Like, I think this is what I do, but I don't know. And at the end of the day, like I just try asking people that also have gone through this journey, because everyone's journey is a little bit different. So just a nice thing for you to ponder on. But I think that you're just a very self-driven person, which helped
Thank
you
you.
get to that level. So I would love to hear how the next phase of your
Mhm.
career has gone since you got that nice internship associate job with that planner.
So I stayed with that firm as an intern until I graduated college in May of 2019. And the second I graduated, I was like, get me the heck out of the North Pole because it was really cold in Wisconsin. And I had kind of wanted to get out of state for college, but in-state tuition kept me in Wisconsin. But the second I graduated, I'm like, okay, this is my opportunity. I decided I wanted to go to the exact opposite of Wisconsin, which in my mind was Arizona. I had never been. But this was the moment. It was kind of a YOLO move for me. And I'm not someone with a huge risk tolerance. I mean, it's at least mid-sized because I am an entrepreneur. I do take a lot of risk, but at that time I was not a huge risk taker. So it was a big deal for me to move across the country, sight unseen, didn't know anyone, didn't have a job, found a nice apartment. At the time, I was trying to move from the same company from Milwaukee to their Scottsdale location, but there were no openings at the time. And so I started interviewing with other firms in Scottsdale, and there was one that I really liked and made it to the final round of the interview. And just before I was about to accept the offer, my original firm, comes back to me and says, hey, we actually do have a job opening in Scottsdale if you want it. And I said, done, sold. I already know the platform. I know kind of the back end people. It'll just be easier to change my entire life, but keep my job relatively the same. So I ended up staying with that firm, moving to Scottsdale, and the apartment I had leased was right down the street from the branch, which just felt kismet. So worked there from 2019 through end of 2021, got all my series certifications, got my CFP, learned a ton. It was even more male dominated in the Scottsdale location than it was in Milwaukee. And the culture was very, very different. I have some great memories. Most of them are not so great memories. I don't know how in detail I want to go. But I think I remember feeling stuck. I remember walking into the branch manager's office when I passed my CFP and just being like, "Hey, put me in the game, coach. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to prospect. I'm ready to be an advisor." And he was like, "No, you have to be an assistant, a client specialist, they called it, for another 10 to 15 years, and then we'll like think about it." But they'd bring in these like 22-year-old guys who had a dad in the biz, who knew nothing, no credentials, and yet they'd be promoted to, associate advisor or lead advisor right away. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? I also had some challenges with the teams I was working with, just verbal abuse, sexual harassment, just not being respected at all. But that firm was all I knew, and it felt really, really scary to think about trying somewhere else. Like it felt like a huge risk to leave. I think I had this thought initially because again, there was no education, not being in a CFP board program, there was no education around the different types of firms. So I had no idea what an RIA was. I thought it was broker dealer and like that was it. Like I thought I stayed at this firm or I went bigger to a Merrill or a Morgan or a Schwab. I didn't know I could go smaller. Like and I didn't have any, connections or community. And so it was really isolating and frustrating time. I don't remember how I found it, but I was scrolling through Facebook one day and I found the FPA Activate Facebook page, which I think is still around. And there was a girl on there who was posting looking for a female mastermind group. And she asked, there was a lot of interest. So she dropped whatever a survey link and was like, hey, if you're interested, just fill this out. I filled it out, but there were about, I want to say 150 women who filled it out. Like, obviously, a huge need for this. And I was by far one of the youngest ones there, one of the least experienced women that had kind of applied. But yet she picked me and four others to join the group. And so that was game changing for me to then have like a support system and a community to bounce things off of and be like, hey, is this normal? Or like, hey, is this okay? And they kept raving. Half of them were still at broker-dealer firms, but the other half were at RIAs and kept raving about how great the culture was at some of these smaller firms. When I had gone through the CFP exam, I had gone to the CFP board website and you can get a mentor, right? And they don't cap you on how many CFP board mentors that you have. And so I had several, quite a few, as many as I possibly could. And one of them happened to be an advisor that I'd interviewed with when I had first moved to Scottsdale, but was still kind of looking for that job initially, thinking I didn't have an opportunity at my old firm. And I remember, making that last round of the interview, loving the firm feel. And we had gotten happy hour a few months after I passed the CFP to celebrate. And he's like, hey, I'm building a new division at this RIA in Old Town Scottsdale and would love to have you come over as an associate advisor and help me build out this division. It's for, young professionals, young families. It's a monthly subscription model versus an AUM model. And I was already so over the investment management side of things. That's all we did at my broker dealer firm, basically. And so it felt really, really scary. And I needed a lot of like hand holding, but eventually I was like, yes, I'll do it. Let's go. This is the end of 2021. I moved to this mid-sized RIA firm. It feels like paradise compared to the broker-dealer firm, where I've been at. So much more autonomy. The pay was way better. I think I was making like $42,000 a year in the industry. So pretty low. But again, I had nothing to compare it to. And I jumped from, I think, 42 to around 60,000 when I moved to this mid-sized firm as an associate advisor. And again, this is 2021. So I'm sure kids are making much more now. It was a really great time. I loved like the feel of building something. It felt very entrepreneurial. It was just me and this older advisor in this business. It was going great. I loved it. Was learning a lot. Was hands-on at client meetings. Was building plans in e-money for the first time ever, which is really, really cool. And then in November, so 8 to 10 months later, my uncle passes away, and I fly to Indianapolis for his funeral. And as I'm landing back in Arizona, I'm getting all these texts from people who are higher up at this mid-sized RIA saying, congratulations, like you're gonna do great, so excited for you. And I'm like, what is going on? My uncle just died. I've been off for a week. Like something is up. And I get back to the office and the older advisor has left. So it's just me. And we built this division together. I'm like 24, 25 at the time. Suddenly, I'm going from associate advisor to lead advisor overnight and running an entire division of the business by myself and feeling so unqualified. Like, what? Like, me? What is going on? And explaining it to clients, some of whom are very unhappy that I am now their lead advisor. Some of them didn't give a crap. We're like, okay, great, let's go. How's my portfolio doing? But that was a really big growth moment for me, I think. And then I had the awesome experience over the next year and a half of building out my ideal team. We hired 4 or 5 other advisors. We brought a manager over from a fintech firm. We grew a ton, and it was just a really cool entrepreneurial-esque experience. At the same time, I'm going back to Golden Gate University for a year-long grad school program in financial life planning and learning about the registered life planner certification and really kind of coming back to that like financial therapy, psychology of money calling or like intuitive feelings that I had very early on in my career. But there's no place for me to do that at this firm. There's no one else that feels like aligned with this kind of side of the industry. And I'm also running into a lot of red tape with upper management. It was still very good old boys club at the top. And I was starting to notice it more and more. I was definitely respected more as an employee, but there were still some things that didn't feel aligned for me. My pay basically stayed the same from when I was an associate advisor to then running the division, but everyone he brought in was making 100K more than I was, and they refused to increase my compensation. And I'm like, hey, I'm working 28/7 here, so I was feeling not quite as valued as I wanted to be, and was really thinking about launching my own practice at that time, starting kind of to like informational interview other RA owners that I'm meeting and just doing some research, learning about like XYPN, just seeing, hey, what would the startup cost look like? Feeling it out a little bit, but not feeling like I have anywhere near enough experience to launch my own firm. I'm, 25, maybe 26 at this point. And one of the students at my GGU, Golden Gate University program, I kind of shared this vision with him and he's like, hey, you should meet my mentor. He runs his own practice. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. I sit down with his mentor. This is probably like really early in 2023. And he's like, hey, we'd love to help you start your practice, or I'm hiring for a lead advisor at my firm. It's a small 4-person solo RIA. And we do George Kinder's 3 questions, which is part of the financial life planning training. And I'm like, bingo, like this is it. And kind of a crazy kismet meeting too. Like I wasn't even job searching, right? But I was feeling a little bit unsatisfied. And so move over to his firm. This is my third and final stop in the industry before I launch my own practice. And I'm there for a little under a year. Learned so much about like the business owner side and love that we didn't do AUM there. But we did really high level financial planning, worked with really amazing clients. I did a lot of student loan planning because I'd gotten my CSLP credentials at that point and loved the kind of the 4-person like family feel of a small office. It felt really good. The comp was amazing. It was very aligned with my work. Day to day, what we were doing was really exciting and aligned. But end of that year, things changed quite a bit. The owner was completely restructuring the firm, changing the niche. Like a lot of my clients who I loved, asking for things that I didn't feel that I wanted to give anymore. I didn't feel like I was as valued or as seen as I had been like months prior. It was a very sudden change. And it was the end of the year, end of 2023. And I'm like, this is my sign to go off on my own. When am I going to have this opportunity again? Like, start of a new year, it's 2024. I don't have kids, I don't have a mortgage. Like, hey, let's just do this. And so I filed for my LLC for Daring Greatly Wealth on January 5th of 2024. And because it was so sudden, I made the executive decision not to file as an RIA because I didn't want to wait like that 6 or 7 month period for my ADV to be filed and to go through. I just wanted to hit the ground running, start helping people now, and just get going. I'll pause again because this is not the Cliff Notes version. I'm so sorry. This is the long version.
That's okay. This is great because I'm learning a few things about your journey. I was like,
Are
whoa,
you?
that happened too. And I've probably heard it a few times already. But what's so interesting is once you feel like you're no longer aligned, you're quick to, I need to get out of
Yes.
there. I need to change to something that's
Mhm.
more aligned. Was it scary going through those transitions?
Oh, terrifying. But that's when I've grown the most as a financial planner, is when I'm thrown into situations or things change really quickly and I have to navigate that. Especially when it comes to like imposter syndrome, you overcome that shit real quick when you're just forced to be in that spot. And I think that worked out for the better. Like, especially when I launched my own firm, I would have stayed in the procrasta planning phase forever and ever if I hadn't been kind of like pushed out of the nest.
Well, why don't you wrap up starting your
Yeah.
own firm and then we can shift into some different questions.
It's mid-February, so I'm officially in year 3 of running my own practice. It's structured as financial coaching, financial life planning. So I do really in-depth hands-on work with clients. My bread and butter is a 6-month program called Life Design by Lillian, where we meet 12 times over 6 months and we go really in depth on your financial life. But we don't focus on the investments, which is really, really different. Like we don't at all focus on investments because I'm not an RIA. I do some, of course, education around investing and when a target date fund makes sense, for example, but I'm not giving investment recommendations. And I do hourly sessions as well. I do group programs, I do courses, I'm writing a book. It's given me a lot of like creative freedom and joy, which is really exciting. But I'm craving more stability and just something different. And so I have kind of a Daring Greatly Wealth 2.0 plan that I'm working through, me and Excel. And so things are going to change a little bit going forward, but it's been a really amazing 2 years of just trying things out, experimenting, moving really quickly. It's given me the freedom to be really involved with FPA, to go to a lot of conferences. I think I'm speaking at 13 different conferences this year. So I've been able to travel a ton the last 2 years, which I never would have working for a corporate firm, 9 to 5 with 10 days of PTO. I took all of December off for the wedding and the honeymoon, which is just amazing. So I'm just loving the time freedom, the autonomy, the agency of being an entrepreneur. That being said, it is really lonely. I miss having like a team of people to bounce ideas off of, to share things with. And it's definitely not always financially stable with a lot of feast and famine still, which can be fun, but also can be really depressing. Hard to predict as a planner who likes a little bit of certainty. But I've learned a lot about myself. Entrepreneurship is truly the ultimate personal development exercise. And so that's been kind of cool too, from that standpoint. Plus, I get to write a lot of things off on my taxes, which I love. So yeah, here we are.
Before we pivot to FPA involvement and your position as chair of NextGen, I'd love to dive a bit deeper into how you do your own testing for if you're aligned with your current
Mhm.
position, because you seem to have a great strength in figuring out, am I aligned in what I'm currently doing with what
Mhm.
my best strengths are, and is this the best place for me to move forward? And I think that a lot of people struggle with knowing, is it me? Is it the firm I'm at? Is it the job I'm doing? How do I know what's out of alignment? And how have you developed your alignment test along the way?
Ooh, okay, Allie, with the great questions today. Well, yes, I feel alone in the business part. One of my biggest investments is always in support. So I've hired a lot of coaches, worked a lot with my therapist over the last few years, gone through multiple like programs for entrepreneurs. So I think that's also really helped. I had a behavior change coach for a while. So I've just gotten to really know myself, but also I have people who kind of see that in me. Um, I think too going through George Kinder's registered life planner training was transformational for me because you get life plan before you learn how to life plan others. And I got a really clear sense of what does my ideal life look like right now? What does it feel like? And being able to lean into that and dream into it. I think so often as adults, even young adults, we don't give ourselves permission to dream. We're just kind of stuck in this rat race, 9 to 5, same shit, different day. And I hate that. And so now that I'm an entrepreneur, I've had the freedom to learn to be a little bit more aware or aligned. And it's a privilege for sure to be able to change my business at the drop of a hat or to take a whole month off. Like I don't take that for granted at all. But I will say I'm very clear on what my values are. I'm very clear on like what aligned spending looks like. So I have a whole strategy when it comes to aligned spending. But I think when it comes to myself and what's aligned or what's not, it's just more of a feeling. I for sure notice my energy. Like if I'm not doing what I'm meant to be doing, my energy is really low. I don't wake up as excited for the day, which is not how I want to live my life. Life is short. I want to wake up, happy and looking forward to seeing my clients and not dreading that I'm going to be doing Roth conversions all day. I think too, my husband sees it in me too if he notices that I'm a little bit more down in the dumps or more frustrated. Quite aware of that, but it's probably more of doing the inner work than like having a set framework, if that makes sense.
You may have answered this already just throughout your stories, but I wanted to ask it pointed. Like anybody that follows you and sees the content you post and the way you explain financial planning, you've got to like it's uniquely yours,
Different.
the way that you see
Mhm.
financial planning. So
Yeah.
putting it all together, how was everything, all of the experiences you had, the training, the coaches, how has that all created this version, Lillian's version of financial planning?
One, being a woman, we learn a lot of things from what society wants of us, external pressures, etc. And being in corporate America for so long, I learned a lot of just behaviors or mindset or negative self-talk. And so I've had the opportunity to unlearn every single one of those things over the past 2 years of being an entrepreneur. And that has led me to this really crisp, authentic version of myself. But it has required getting way outside of my comfort zone, being really uncomfortable, increasing my discomfort tolerance. I just did the same thing three times through different ways, but you get the point. Like for example, when it comes to social media, I was never someone who posted on Instagram before I launched my business. Maybe like once or twice a year, right? But it was like family vacation photos. And I post almost every single day. And so it was really hard. I want to say even the first 12 months of getting up and just showing my face on Instagram stories and talking to camera was so uncomfortable. But the more reps you get, the better. And same thing with like getting comfortable being in a client meeting. The more reps you do, the more rapidly it gets more comfortable to do. And so really kind of forcing myself, but also like making a conscious choice to get really uncomfortable has helped. Obviously, like all the speaking I've been doing, just things that bring me out of my shell a little bit more. And I will also say one of the greatest benefits of being an entrepreneur is freedom of speech. And of course, as Americans, like we think we have that. But I was always so worried about posting something on LinkedIn, my boss would see it and then would fire me, or I say something on social media, compliance sees it, I get fired. Who's gonna fire me now? Like it's just me. I can say whatever I want. Like maybe I'll lose, worst case I lose like a client or I lose 100 followers on social media, but even then it's probably for a reason if I'm acting in alignment. And just this belief, just this subconscious belief of like when you live your aligned or authentic life, money flows to you, joy, zest for life flows to you. It's just the way that I choose to experience life, and I simply don't have time for anything else.
Let's flip to your intention
Mhm.
as the FPA NexGen chair and what your goals are as chair for 2026.
Okay, so we have three overarching strategic initiatives for FPA NextGen this year, which was hard. I'm someone who likes to have a lot of big goals, but I was trying to be more realistic this year because 12 months is not a lot of time to make massive change. Our listeners haven't heard this term. We're calling this the reign of Lillian, ROL, which works out really well because my favorite phrase is like helping you maximize your return on life, maximizing your ROL, not just your ROI. So that makes me really happy. But phase number one is really providing more resources and support to our career changers community. One, because I'm in this field because of that career changer who helped kind of hire me as a full-time intern at my very first firm, and I owe her a lot. But also because career changers are very like underserved demographic of next gen, yet one of the fastest growing aspiring planner demographics that we have. And they have a very unique kind of support need compared to young college kids who are coming out of a CFP board program nowadays and having some resources, but not a lot of life experience. Career changers have the opposite problem, a lot of life experience, but not a lot of, education in personal finance. Their degrees were often in completely different fields. So it can be a lot harder to make that transition, and they usually have to require a certain level of income to support themselves and their family. So I wanted to create a community and a safe space with resources for them so they can feel like seen, heard, and respected within our next gen community. And we started that by creating our own next gen national career changers subcommittee, which is made up of the best and the brightest career changers we know in this field. So I'm really excited about that. They have some cool stuff on the docket for this year. Step number two, or initiative number two, is helping I'm calling them our first gen financial planners, but really all aspiring financial planners enter the industry and find their right fit or right role as soon as possible so that we can keep them, we can retain them in the industry. Because I'm seeing on the front end, our first gen wealth builders and financial planners who don't have a connection in the business, they don't have a dad or an uncle or maybe even a mom in the business, are having a really hard time coming in. But even once they're in, they're getting picked up by the large insurance firms or the firms that run with PJ that just don't really take care of their employees very well. There's a lot of churn and burn. You're more of a number. It's all about like the profits, not the people. And so, how do we get them to understand that that's not the whole industry? It's just a very small part of this industry, and there's other really good firms. Michael Kitces has a study that it takes someone, three firms to find the right fit. For me, like the fourth firm was launching a practice because I just couldn't find that right fit. But I think for a lot of advisors, that's pretty common. And so, how do we maybe speed up that process or make the industry more clear versus as murky as it is right now, more transparent? So, generally speaking, what career path in the industry feels exciting and possible for you versus kind of like trying to have to scrape around in the dark to figure out what you like. And then, like, of course, providing more and more resources for our planners who are aspiring planners and just want more information, they want more connections, they want more support. How can we do that on a much larger level? So there's a lot of things that we're working on kind of underlying that initiative. And then initiative three is almost always just driving national FPA next gen awareness, which is why we're all here on this podcast, why I'm doing so much speaking this year, why we do a lot of webinars and just different ways to get the word out about how cool our community is here at FPA NexGen, how welcoming it is, how much your voice matters in our community is really important. So just a lot of marketing, PR, trying to get Jake to get really creative with our social media marketing this year. So lots of kind of fun stuff going on there. But those are the big three. Of course, there's others, but that's our overarching mission for the year.
Career changers that are listening, we will have some of the Career Changers committee members on the podcast later this season. So
They're
keep an eye
excited.
out for that. Well, one thing on this podcast for the season 4, our word is ignite, and we have a
Mm,
signature question. So I wanted to pose this to you.
cool.
What did you start or stop doing that accelerated your career?
I'm someone that definitely struggled with imposter syndrome early on. Part of it was put on me. Part of it, of course, was internal. I really had to stop believing that I wasn't capable, that I was too young to be successful in the industry, that I didn't know enough. Because even if you have your 7 or your 66, you know so much more than the vast majority of the American population. Like you're already way ahead of the game. So I stopped kind of discounting myself and my education and my experience. And I put myself in rooms that I did not feel like I belonged in. Even now, I just was at a program it's called the Integrative Wealth Advisor Program. I was by far the youngest, the poorest, the least experienced person in that room. It was multi-billion dollar, RA CEOs in that room. And it was terrifying. But I grew so much just being in that space, in that community. And my belief in myself just blossomed. So yeah, stop discounting yourself, stop doubting yourself. You're doing so much better than you think you are. And clients really do care about your perspective and what you have to say and your really crazy personal finance analogies. They care, I promise you. So keep, speaking loud, sharing your voice, sharing your opinions.
Well, that's great. I think that we are all learned a lot from your story. Looking forward to all that you're going to accomplish as chair in 2026. You've
Mhm.
got the podcast team cheering you on over here and ready to see all those awesome
Thank
initiatives
you.
come through. Happy to bring them up throughout the podcast season as well, because they all bleed into everything next gen, and we want to help the next gen as much as possible. So thank you so much for coming on today, and I hope you dare greatly into the rest of 2026.
Thank you, Allison. And just a quick plug, if you haven't already signed up for Next Gen Gather this year in Dallas in mid to late August, I'm going to try to convince Dominic Monk, my co-chair, to do the Hoedown Throwdown from Hannah Montana live on stage with me. You will not want to miss that. So get your tickets now.
Come see us too. Podcast will be there. Lillian will be there.
Yeah.
So it'll be a great time. Thank you all for listening. This has been The Blueprint, an FPA Next Gen podcast.